You might be wondering who HeyGears is, and while they're new to the consumer market, they've been developing printers since 2015 that specialize in industrial printing with dental and prosthetic applications. Now they're bringing that level of quality into your home with their new UltraCraft Reflex and a one-stop production platform. Hello and welcome to Lady Dynamite Creates. This is Tiffany, and today I'm sharing with you the new 3D printer that HeyGears has been kind enough to send me, along with their wash and cure machines. As you may know, I've owned many 3D printers over the years, and I can easily say this printer is the easiest to use and set up. You can achieve better print results with the dual wavelength final curing, and you can count on uniform exposure. They added so many quality of life features like auto zeroing, auto leveling, and a heated resin tray. They have also made strides to minimize your contact with the resin itself with resin level detection and auto resin refill. The UltraCraft Reflex will even tell you how much resin is in the vat and how much remains in the bottle. These things will make a huge difference in your printing experience, whether you're new to printing or you've been doing it for years like me. So since we've got all this new fancy equipment, of course we have to 3D print a doll, right? While I may know how to 3D model, I've never modeled a BJD before, so buying an STL was a much better option this time. I found Rinka by the artist Sherhiti. I'm sorry if I didn't pronounce that right. And I thought she was just gorgeous. Her slim build screamed fairy to me, so I found some wings and decided to give her some modifications and turn her into a demon fairy. I've linked both models down in the description box below. I import the chest, the wing, and the shoulder joint into my 3D program. I scale the wing until I feel it's a good size for the doll. I'm going to use the shoulder joint and socket as a reference on how to construct the joint for the wings. I place the shoulder into the socket to see the clearance around the joint, then I use a sphere to measure the size of the socket and see how deeply inset it is. I mark the depth for reference later. I move and scale the sphere onto the back and make sure both sockets will have the correct space, then I Boolean subtract the geometry to leave a socket behind for the wings. I model a ball joint for the end of the wing. It gets a bit confusing to watch here because I was having some issues with the geometry, but I created a ball, then added a horizontal slot and hollowed out the inside. Then I added a post and then attached all this to the wing. Now I can prep my STL files for printing. One thing that is really great about HeyGears is they handle everything, both hardware and software. The slicing software Blueprint is really quite amazing and very beginner friendly. When you create a slicing file, you select your presets and type of resin to be used. Typically in the past when preparing a file, having to figure out the printer settings with that resin, take into consideration how cold it is, and any number of little things that can make a print fail, and it's a huge headache. Instead, HeyGears offers its own proprietary resins and smart AI algorithms that require very little effort by the user that results in an easier printing process and more successful prints. Once a file is imported, you can run an automated check for repairs and orient the model. There are preset options, but if none of those are desired, you can manually orient the model like I did here because I wanted to avoid supports on the face as much as possible. The printability check has to be one of my favorite features. It automatically detects issues with your model and lets you know if you're going to run into suction cupping and other issues. I did find that I had a lot of thin-walled warnings, but that was to be expected. I mean, dainty doll shoes and parts are nothing but thin-walled structures. It shows you exactly where the issues are and allows you to fix them before moving on. Once all the checks have been run, it's only a few clicks before you get to printing. One click to automatically support, one click to automatically lay out, one click to slice, then finally send to the printer via Wi-Fi. That's right, no more thumbsticks needed. HeyGears provides a comprehensive solution to 3D printing needs. Their entire process makes 3D printing easier for everyone, and their industrial-grade mechanical parts and algorithms offer greater precision with higher detail and smoother print surfaces. As someone who runs an Etsy business selling 3D printed doll accessories, I know just how much time is lost to simply making sure you can get a reliable print result before offering something for sale. I have even had to take things off my shop because a change in weather has started causing prints to fail. If you're looking to start 3D printing or grow your 3D printing business, then I encourage you to check out HeyGears. It will definitely save you time, money, and headaches. HeyGears sent me tons of resin to try out. Their PAU10, which is a strong ABS-like resin that is suitable for functional parts, PAT10, which is their transparent resin, and their UltraPrint designed CMYK resin, which is what I'm going to be using for this doll. This set allows you to mix up a full spectrum of colors and is designed to successfully print no matter what color you mix. I mixed up a gorgeous peachy pink skin tone to use for this doll. With the resin loaded in, I set it to print. Once the print is complete, I easily remove the build plate with the latch release and quickly pop the prints off. Next, I pop the print into the wash station and watch it go. The wash station cleans by shaking the entire container, rather than having a propeller circulate the solution. I like this because I have had to replace my propeller tanks because the magnets on the propellers start to rust. I wash parts individually that have sharp edges like the horns because I was worried they would scratch up other prints. After the washing is finished, you place the vat with the print on top of the empty vat and turn the valve to allow all the alcohol to drain into the lower vat to minimize your contact. I still use a hot water bath to remove supports. This isn't necessary, but I find it makes them pull away easier. With all the supports removed, I can move them to the cure station. The software even allows you to send the file over Wi-Fi to the cure station to achieve the best cure for the resin used. I did want to share a few prints with you first. The darker gray is the resin I usually use on my other printer, and you can see there's a gap and the pieces just don't fit. This is something I've run into multiple times in the past. You'll recall on my lightning bug I had to use epoxy to fill the spaces. The lighter gray is the PAU10 resin, and look at how perfect this is. The prints are just much more accurate. Here are some of my shoes printed in the CMYK mixable colors. The details are very clear and the prints are great no matter which color I used. I wound up sending the red butterfly heels out to my Patreon supporters for this month's reward. I also tried out the PAU10 with some shoes and look at how much flex that resin has. I did eventually break it, but you can see it's super durable. Let's jump back to our doll and get these pieces prepped. There are some spots that need cleaning up where the supports were, but it really requires minimal sanding to make them look beautiful. You can see there's no discoloration from sanding and no yellowing on the prints from curing. Apparently their resin has anti-aging properties for longer lasting prints. This BJD was designed so that the hands, feet, and faceplate were removable with the help of magnets. I pair my magnets and give each set a black dot on both ends. This way I know the black dot needs to be facing the glued surface. This keeps me from mixing up the polarity of the magnets while I work. I glue these into their slots with super glue. Since we're making her into a demon fairy, she needs wings. I printed the insect-like wings in Pat 10 clear resin. The prints turned out beautiful with absolutely no yellowing. I give them a good sanding to remove any support marks, and I'm going to gloss them back to clear. Alcohol baths will cloud clear resin, but it's easily fixed with a top coat of varnish. I'm using no wipe UV polish to bring the wings back to a crystal clear finish. I wanted to take a moment to thank all of my friends over on Patreon. I'm so grateful for their support of my art. Angel Book Walter, B. Burnett, Deborah Sweeney, Stephanie L., Manders, Delicious, Amber S., Awkward Burb, Beck's Mini Studio, Camille, Dancing Joe Hari, Kitsy, Kay Webell, and the Oak Magpie. Here you can see the before and after. It's such a huge difference. Now to give them an insect-like shimmer, I'm rubbing iridescent mica powder over the surface of the wings, and I'm sealing it all in with a clear spray varnish. I love the effect this gives because from different angles, the flash of color is different. Now let's move on to clothing. I start with a simple pattern for booty shorts and start by sewing the dart, then attaching the fronts to the back of the side seams and hemming the leg opening. Now that I have a left and a right side, I can connect them at the front seam. I take care to match up my notches for a better fit. The shorts are one big piece now, and I can hem the top raw edge. I match up the back seam and sew it together, leaving enough room that the shorts will still fit over her hips. Finally, I sew up the crotch seam and add a Velcro closure. Off camera, I made her a bralette in a similar manner. Now let's put this outfit over the top with an iridescent harness. I've cut strips of iridescent faux leather into a few different thicknesses and start gluing things into place with super glue and jump rings. I did a mock-up before I started to see how I wanted this to look, and even drew the final shape on the mannequin in a few key places to reference as I go. Now that I have the harness constructed and glued into place, I add a few flat back gems as decorative rivets. I love how this turned out, and I feel like it draws attention to her wave-like appearance in the best way. She needs shoes, of course, so I modeled and printed some for her. I quickly sand away the spots left behind by the supports and get them painted black. I could have used the black CMYK resin for this, but I really wanted to see how this resin performed and how easily it took paint. Once the black was dry, I went over the top with a dragonfly glaze to give it that subtle shimmer. The shoes are perfect and the print was absolutely flawless and super tough. I actually tried to break the heel off and I couldn't. Now for the most exciting part, the face-up. These are the colors and products that I've used this time around, and a full list is available in the description box below. I've prepped her with 3 coats of Mr. Super Clear UV Cut Flat, and I waited 30 minutes between each coat and then I get started. If you've ever drawn on a 3D printed surface, you'll understand what I'm saying. It's usually a bit scratchy or rough feeling because it's made up of a lot of thin layers. It's just how the printing process works. This resin, however, had a surface that was super smooth. It felt like drawing on a cast or mold injected surface instead of a 3D print. The pencils went on very smoothly and the pastels looked great with no patchy areas. I applied colorless blender to help the pastels blend together, and I used analogous tones for her eyeshadow and contouring. I shaded her lips, but I found the crease to be too small to use my pencils, so I used a brush to detail them. With a light blue watercolor pencil, I draw in some veining. I use a very delicate touch and have the pencil barely glide across the surface to create the faintest of lines. I draw these in on areas that have thinner skin like the ears and forehead. Now I start on layer 2 by sketching out the eyebrows. I had a really hard time deciding on the shape. Her eyes are downturned, and when paired with the horns, I had some difficulty. I actually took the mannequin head that I used to make the wig cap and used it as a testing ground for getting the shape right. I'm not one to usually use a brush for lashes, but after how well the lips work, I decided to push my comfort a bit and give it a go. They turned out perfect, just the right amount of wispy. I can't resist giving her a few beauty marks too. At this point, it's become a signature look for my dolls that are just a little bit naughty. I highlight the high points on her face and then give a generous dusting of sparkly mica powder, and the face-up's done. She needs eyes, and the doll file came with these lovely bases to print. I printed them in the pale gray HeyGears PAU10 resin because I don't like perfectly white scleras. I dust the iris with mica powder, then use my watercolor pencils to give additional shading and details. I spray a coat of sealant, then I drop a dot of resin onto the top and place a clear AB flatback gem as the pupil. Usually flatback gems are not good to use, but I actually wanted the flattened look to the pupil so that it has the flashback that you see in animal eyes. I give it a final dome of resin and use a lighter to pop any bubbles, then I set it with a UV light and they're all done. I love how they turned out. That flash in the pupil is a very cool effect, and the quality of the print is outstanding. All those sculpted details really pop. But before I can put the irises in, I need to add her lashes. I apply a thin layer of gem tack glue to the opening of the upper waterline. I let this dry a bit so that it's a bit stickier so the lashes don't just pop right off. I use a toothpick to press the lashes firmly to the surface. Now I can pop these eyes in. I'm using a poster mounting putty to keep them in place. I roll a snake of it and wrap it around the eye, then push it into the back of the head. Adding the eyes really brings her to life, and I can't wait for you to see her all together. Even though she looks very striking without her hair, I wanted to make a wig for her. I take my mannequin head and first cover it in cling film and then a dried baby wipe. I use an elastic to ensure it's secured tightly to the head. I liberally coat this with 2 layers of Almore's Craft Bond, and when it's dried, I can sketch out the shape for the wig cap. I cut away the excess fabric to make it easier to remove, and I trim the cap along my sketched line. Before I start adding wefts, I do want to give it a coat of paint, just so the white of the cap doesn't show through. I start at the bottom and I add rows of wefts. When I add in the portion that will be her bangs, I trim each section after it's added. This makes it easier for me to work with. For the part line, I crease wefts and fold over the edge, then glue them down. I make sure to butt these 2 pieces against each other for a neat part. I played around with different styles, but the long hair covered the wings and the updos competed with the horns, so I landed on a choppy bobbed cut, taking inspiration from the haircut Pris wears in Blade Runner. You'll remember, this is where we started. And here's where we ended up. I've decided to call her Lucy. If you're interested, Lucy is available for purchase on my Etsy shop. Just look for the link in the description box below. I wanted to thank HeyGears for sponsoring this video, and be sure to check out their website because they have a sale running until September 1st. You can save money if you pre-order now. The link to their pre-order is down below. I wanted to thank you all so much for watching, and remember, always be creating!